Look at this, folks. I'm back once again with Erika Brown, the publisher and editor of The Cricket over in Manchester. It's been a while, Erika.
A while. It's been like 3 weeks. For
I
us,
know.
it's like an eternity.
Yeah, crazy.
You were having this relaxing, lovely holiday in Mexico, right?
Yeah,
You did
yeah,
that first
yeah.
and
And then you went
travel,
to Southern Cal.
and then I went to SoCal, yep, for a
Yeah,
wedding.
very
But
nice.
anyway,
And
so
here
we're
we are, tanned, rested, and back into whatever we do.
yes,
What
exactly.
are we doing? What is going on in Manchester these days? The craziness just keeps mounting over there.
Oh, that's not true.
I
It's
got a
not
glimpse of
crazy.
the headline, Erika.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah,
well,
that's nuts.
I will say this. The big thing this week is this mailer that went out. It was a postcard. You know how you get these postcards in the mail? Those oversized, glossy postcards. Usually they're from, a realtor or something like that.
Especially
And,
this
and
time of year now with election season.
exactly, exactly. Around election time, you get a lot of candidate kind of mailers. They all go out by this product from the U.S. Postal Service. That's actually a really good product. It's called Every Door Direct. And it's a post office program, and you work through post office sanctioned printers who print and then distribute, your piece to. It's easy for them because it goes to every door. That's why it's called Every Door Direct. So Every Door Direct. And there was a mailer that went out and to every house and business in Manchester by the Sea. And it looked like it was from the town of Manchester. It was very official looking, and it had a town seal. It was in the town colors. It had the town fonts. It was two-sided. And it basically said, it urged voters to vote against these articles that the planning board had come out with. The planning board we've been talking about for the last 2 years about recodification and zoning and da 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 da. Well, this mailer basically urged voters at town meeting on November 14th to vote against those planning board zoning changes, right? And it was kind of fear mongery, this is going to change and everything. But it had the town seal, it had everything. And it was confusing to a lot of residents. And the reason why it was confusing was because they'd gotten almost an identical mailer the week before that was from the town.
Mm.
Okay. And it was something that said, go ahead, town meeting's coming up, and we have a lot of, we know that the planning board's changed, proposed zoning changes, which by the way are endorsed by the select board. They're complicated. So we have an open house. Here's a QR code to find more information. And, it was essentially helping people get the information they need to vote properly at town meeting, right? Well, this one was a fake, and it was very, very interesting. It was incredibly disruptive, and it's really getting a lot of attention it's gotten a lot of attention by a lot of people. First of all, the post office, by the next day I'd call them, they said that they were investigating it. Because it does run afoul of a U.S. Postal Service regulation that's called, they call it a government lookalike mailer, and they're prohibited. Once you do things with the U.S. Postal Service, by the way, it triggers some very serious things. You cannot use federal resources to do anything that feels fraudulent, right? So now, fraud is a legal term. I mean, to me, fraud is when you misrepresent something and you say you're something that you're not, right? That guy's a fraud.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this type of thing, fraud is a very specific legal term, and it's about money. So if you use the Postal Service to solicit campaign donations or money with those things, that's criminal, and that's a really big deal. This is getting voters to do things, so it gets into manipulating voting and democracy, and that's like really funky. And if you use a town seal to do it, like, first of all, you're not allowed to do that with the US government, with the Postal Service, but it's also against a Massachusetts state law to use a town seal without permission. So these guys have gotten themselves into trouble. Now, who are these guys, right? Who sent it?
Yeah.
It was anonymous. And it was very interesting. And they've taken great pains to remain anonymous. It's a group called Manchester Matters. I've heard about them for months because they're kind of a group that was loosely formed around regional dispatch. They were upset that regional dispatch was happening and da da da. So it's expanded obviously to include this kind of going against the zoning things. But the only thing they had is the QR code on their mailer went to a Facebook page, and it was a Facebook group. And the Facebook group was first of all, it's a private group. It was a private group because it's since been taken down. I contacted Facebook on Friday and I said, all right, well, it looks like this is administered by a fake account and I want to know about this group. Well, the group was down by Monday. The person who is the administrator of the Facebook group is this woman called Catherine Merck, as in the pharmaceutical company. That's how it's.
Yeah.
So you look her up and she has no friends, no videos, no profile, no history, no nothing. And the only thing she has ever done is create an event around the town meeting on the November 14th in Manchester by the Sea. And then B, she's the administrator of this group. So the Facebook group was taken down by Monday. And then we formally requested the identity from the US Postal Service of the person who paid for that mailer, because that mailer, that's not anonymous, even though they didn't put their name on it. Somebody paid for it and somebody applied to do it. They also did another mailer and they did a bulk mailer in a flyer in an envelope at the same time. They sent it bulk mail out of Gloucester. So I went to the Gloucester post office and I priced it out. It looks like they paid about $3,000 between, both of those things, between the postcard and this. But anyway, it's a big deal and it's really animated a lot of people. That sort of silent majority has started to not be so silent. And they are saying, listen, this is terrible. This is really bad. It's a manipulation. People are going on record and they're saying that. And they're saying, they're noticing that Manchester Matters kind of evokes Black Lives Matter, which is incredibly offensive considering that this is about, sort of a white privilege issue about zoning and wanting to make zoning more restrictive to keep people out, right? That doesn't feel so good. And so it's a very kind of, interesting thing that's playing out. And the selectmen say that they're going to research this and the post office is investigating it and we're putting in our own feelers as well. So we'll see what happens with it. I will say this, I did talk to somebody who is a member of the Manchester, it's not a formal member, club, but I did talk to somebody who's part of it. And this person I actually respect and trust. I know that this person doesn't lie. And they said they had nothing to do with the mailer, that it was kind of a subgroup, but that the reason why they kept it anonymous, and this is very interesting, is that they said, listen, there are a couple people who are associated with the group, who are members of the group that are sitting on boards, and that really, current board members. That gets you into something that just does not feel good. And the select board is very upset about it. So.
Well, when you first started unraveling this story, Erika, just in this discussion here, the first thing I thought of was the quick turnaround from the first mailer to the other mailer, right? And it's not satirical, but to copy the font, have the design down, and turn that around that quickly. One, that's a hell of a graphic designer to be able to turn that around a program that fast.
Yes.
But yeah, it makes you wonder, is there anything, I wonder if there are any criminal underpinnings to any of this. What can you get away with? Can you actually, you're misleading people. You're purposely misleading people and with a town seal.
You're absolutely right. You're not just misleading people. You're not just presenting yourself as a government entity, but you're doing it within the context of an election, right? Stop and think about that. That's very serious. These people are about to vote. The second thing is you've used a government agency, the US federal, the US Postal Service, to actually distribute widely this material.
Yeah, these aren't flyers under your windshield wipers.
That's exactly.
You're right.
It's kind of gets into a weird thing. I'll tell you something wonky. It's like kind of nerdy wonky. That's kind of the kind of thing I like. One of the things I found really interesting, and this gets us into a little bit of a discussion, but I'll be quick. I was talking to the Secretary of State's office about this because the Secretary of State in Massachusetts oversees elections and they ensure elections. They certify, that's the regulatory body, right? And so I was talking to somebody in there and I had developed a relationship with them because remember back with town meeting with the gadgets that actually there was a mishap with our gadgets and there were a couple questions where there was a 40%, we were off 40% on our vote. And I learned that the Secretary of State goes to great pains to regulate and oversee the veracity of ballot tabulation machines, right, for elections. But nobody oversees the veracity of tabulating, these gadgets at town meeting. And that's kind of a blind spot for the state. Well, guess what? There are regulations about election-oriented things that go in the mail, but there are no regulations about voting-related things that go out in the mail about town meeting. A town meeting vote, even though it is an election mechanically, is not seen in the same way as an election at a polling station. Even though right now you'd think that town meeting, because you raise your hand and you're physically broadcast who you're voting for, right? That's what you think. But you don't, with these gadgets, it's anonymous now at town meeting. It's no different than going into a booth and voting. So it is kind of interesting, these kinds of things about manipulating an election versus manipulating voters going to vote at a town meeting. And that's kind of an interesting thing. One last thing I'll say is that apparently, and this is another thing that the Secretary of State's office told me, back in 2006, there was a Massachusetts law against you had to have your name on circulars and mailers for election. And it was repealed by Massachusetts in 2006 in a midnight budget session. Back in 2006, they repealed it for some reason. And Mitt Romney was the governor at the time, and he vetoed it. He said, no, this, and guess what? The Senate, they overturned the veto, which is a pretty high standard.
Interesting.
So maybe they should revisit that law.
Yikes. Spooks and spirits over in Manchester by the Sea. Is there anything going on for Halloween, actually?
Oh, yeah, we did. We had Wobbin' Goblin last week, which is sort of the warm-up, and that was incredibly popular. And then Halloween, they're having the traditional cordoning off downtown in the village areas, shutting down the high-traffic streets with the police, and then a big community party at the Memorial School downtown. Same thing over in Essex. They're having sort of cordoned off areas, and it'll be great.
Nice.
That whole Martin Street kind of area in Essex too. I can't wait. It's one of my favorites, right?
Are we going trick-or-treating or what?
I'll go.
You can go as the true mailer, and I'll go as the fraud mailer. We'll go door to door. We'll go door to door.
Oh my God, can I get my costume? That's brilliant.
All right, thanks for your time as always, Erika. That was a fun one. We'll see you same time next week.
Bye, Kory.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.